Hello and welcome to Church at Home with Rachael for Monday, the 6th of June. As I was driving back from my second church yesterday in Edgerton, back to Wainwright, I was sort of driving around, seeing how beautiful the sky is and all the green, that the rain has come and everything's blooming, and seeing just how many dandelions there are. They're everywhere, like fields of yellow dandelions. And I got thinking that when I was a kid, how hard we worked, and my mom would send us out, and we would go out with these awkward looking forks, and we would try to dig them out by the root, and we'd back before we were ecologically sound, we would spray our lawns with all kinds of horrible chemicals to try to kill off all the dandelions because they were weeds. But I've learned something in the last little while. You see, April, I know it's June, but April was the month of the military child. And military children, the flower for military children is a dandelion. And because part of it's because dandelions can grow anywhere. They are very adaptable. They are strong and resilient, and they pop up in the most unlikely places. And when they go to seed, they fly everywhere. And some people even believe that you can make wishes on dandelions. And that really is the heart of a military child. They are strong and resilient. They bloom where they're planted, and then when they're uprooted, they bloom wherever they're replanted. And so it's really an appropriate flower for the military children. But even beyond that, I think that dandelions they need to come back into their own. A long time ago, dandelions were used for dandelion greens were in salads, and you could make dandelion tea, and I think they had medicinal purposes, and they were used for all kinds of things. Somewhere along the line, we got this idea that something that that we didn't plant, something that we didn't determine needed to be on our lawns, must be a weed. And so we spent generations trying to weed them out and get rid of them, and we villainized, is that a word? Dandelions and other things like that, other wildflowers, until we've sort of created this atmosphere where they were unacceptable little things. They were ugly and they weren't needed, and they just made a lawn look bad. What if we were to take another look and recognize that dandelions, like other wildflowers and other beautiful things that plant themselves and just show up in places that they don't necessarily need to be, maybe they are beautiful themselves. Maybe there's a purpose that just God created them for to have that purpose, and we didn't recognize it. That we struggle to recognize that all things, all things can be beautiful, even if we can't figure out why they're beautiful. I just driving home and seeing all these dandelions and seeing all these front lawns when I got back into town covered in dandelions that grow so tall and so quickly, especially when they're given a little rain and some warm sun. And then when they're done, they turn into these beautiful little balls of fluff that float in the air and look like little fairies or pixies flying around. Why do we automatically assume that they're bad? Why can't we recognize that they too are part of God's creation, and they have a place in the world. They have a beautiful place. They have a purpose. And sometimes just because their purpose doesn't match what we presume they should do doesn't mean it's bad. And I think sometimes we think that about our own situations. I know for myself that I can look back on tons of situations in my life, so many, so many, so many, that I look back on and I think, well, that was just a wasted time, or that experience was, I didn't need that to happen. I would have been better off without that. But really, those situations that I got myself into or found myself in the midst of were often things, unexpected things, that taught me how to become resilient, that taught me how to think differently, which encouraged me to take a different perspective, or maybe slow down, or maybe even stop me from doing something I shouldn't have been doing in the first place. Not all of the things that we run into are bad. Not all of the things that we face are ugly. Not all of the things that we deal with that we don't want to are for the nefarious purposes. Quite often, I think that if we were to sit down and really be patient with ourselves and with whatever it is that's popped into our path, like dandelions on our front lawns, if we actually took the time to sit down and inspect them and pay attention to them and use our senses about them, we might discover that they are innately beautiful in and of themselves, that they can contribute to our life, and maybe we could contribute to theirs. I think I think every once in a while I have this friend of mine pops into my mind. Her name was Jakey, and she was in the all senses of the word a dandelion. Jakey was, I was in grade six and she was in grade five, but she really should have been in grade four. She skipped a grade, and I was in a split grade 4-5 class. So she came into my class, and she was in in some of my groups in class when we lived in Hanover. And Jakey was a thorn in everyone's side. She kind of smelled funny, and she didn't really wash her hair very often, and she hit puberty really early, and so and she just everybody thought she was different. She wasn't like the rest of us. And for whatever reason, Jakey and I became friends. Not really great friends, but I think I was probably one of the few friends she really had. And as I got to know her, I realized that Jakey didn't have a lot of friends, and Jakey didn't have much of a home life. She lived out in the country, and that's why she kind of smelled so bad. And they didn't really have good well water, and that's why she didn't wash a lot. They didn't the water wasn't always readily available, and it was really smelly in itself. But she didn't really know that. Like, that was just the life she had. Her mom was a little bit different, and that wasn't like the other moms. And she lived a life that was more of what we would have referred to as a hippie lifestyle back in the day. And I didn't realize, but Jakey was pretty lonely because her mom sometimes wouldn't come home, and sometimes there wouldn't be food in the fridge and things like that. And I didn't realize that until I was invited to go to Jakey's for a sleepover after her birthday party. She had her birthday party at the local Chinese restaurant, and a couple of girls from class were there, but none of them would go to the sleepover. So my mom said I could, so I went, and it was weird. I'd been to sleepovers before, but this one was really different. Um, and I realized how different Jakey was, but I also realized Jakey was brilliant. There's a reason why she skipped a grade. She probably could have skipped a few more. She was wise beyond her years. She'd also learned the ways of the world way more than I had. And she got me asking questions and thinking about things in different ways. Well, we stayed friends until I moved away from Hanover. And then a couple years later, I saw an article in the paper that mentioned, just one of the side articles in a local newspaper that talks about, interesting facts from around the province. And I was living in Niagara Falls, and I noticed in the paper there was an article about a young woman who had been murdered from Hanover. And so I thought, well, that's where I'm from. So I looked at that, and it said that Jakey she had been found shot in the back and thrown in a ditch just outside of the town, not too far from where she lived. And I was really quite devastated about that. So I asked some family members, and people just, had nothing good to say about Jakey. She was that girl. She probably got what she deserved and things like that. And I was really, really upset to hear that, because you see, when Jakey's body was found, when they went to tell her mom about her, to inform her mother about her death, they couldn't find her. She'd left Jakey. Jakey was in grade 9. She was 14 years old. She was murdered. She was shot in the back and then thrown in a ditch. And the truth is that Jakey was a dandelion. Jakey was the kind of person who could grow up anywhere, who could make the most of her life, who could study and learn and be interested in things, even though no one around her was willing to give her the time or the effort that she deserved. Jakey didn't get a chance to go and fly and plant new dandelions or become who she was really meant to be, because someone else took her life. He was in prison for a while. I think he's out now. But nobody seems to remember Jakey. But every once in a while, I remember her. And I remember our sleepover. And I remember talking to her at school and playing with her at recess and just hanging out with her and realizing, even though she was a bit weird and she looked different than everybody else and she didn't smell so good, She had a wicked sense of humor, and she had an incredible sense of compassion and joy. And she saw good wherever she was, even though all around her, her circumstances weren't. And so when I think of dandelions, and as I was driving home today, I got thinking of the many times that we tend to overlook or denigrate those things in life that may be beautiful in a different way. And I made a made a promise to myself today that I would start looking for the dandelions and the wildflowers and the beautiful things that are just beautiful in a different way, because no one deserves to be forgotten and no one deserves to be overlooked. We're lucky if we're not, but not so many others have what we have. So today, I'm going to keep my eye open for those beautiful dandelions that pop up on my path, and I'm going to stop and I'm going to pay attention and I'm going to thank God for them. I hope you do too. I hope you recognize the many ways that God has planted dandelions, resilient, beautiful, daring, adaptable dandelions in your path. And if you are one, then God bless you. Shine for all your worth and shower the world with wishes. Allow others to wish on you and allow the world to see the power and the strength that is in you if you are one of those dandelions. God bless you all. And I'll see you again tomorrow for Church at Home with Rachael.